All right, welcome back, everybody. Today we are talking Bitcoin. Ton of bullish news coming out this week, and then we're going to dive into a very bearish signal showing on the Bitcoin chart. First, we're going to dive into that news, and then we'll talk chart analysis and price predictions. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to mention before we dive into our first piece of news is that I'm giving away a free chart pattern guide for my subscribers. A lot of you guys have already claimed this, and the feedback has been great, so thank you for that. You can get it by just dropping your email in the Google form in the description below. So now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So the first piece of news, which you guys have already probably heard, is that Fidelity is planning to offer Bitcoin as an investment in their 401k portfolio options. So this is big in terms of opening up the investment pool and the adoption pool for Bitcoin. So this crypto offering is going to be available to 23,000 employers that use Fidelity with over $11.3 trillion in assets under management with this retirement plan through Fidelity. So a lot of money there. The question then becomes, okay, which type of folks are actually going to be willing to dive into Bitcoin and add that to their portfolio? And I would argue that even if a small 1% or 0.5% of folks that actually own IRAs or 401ks through Fidelity, if they end up adopting Bitcoin, as you can see right here, even 1% of that 27.2 million total IRA and 401k accounts managed by Fidelity, even if a 0.5% or percent go for Bitcoin, that's adding another 270,000 people that could be looking at purchasing Bitcoin on a regular basis. A lot of these 401k accounts, if you're familiar with how these work, a lot of them are basically a drip investment. So people are taking money every month out of their paycheck and adding that. So if they have Bitcoin checked off as an option, this could be a ton of new volume coming to the Bitcoin blockchain, which we always love to see. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, which I actually haven't seen that many people talk about, is the kind of changing dynamics of on-chain analytics for Bitcoin. So what we've seen specifically since October 2020 is an increase, and this is kind of when it's really shifted, an increase in the amount of $10 million transactions and just the level of dominance that changed. So this used to be about a 10%. Sorry, I can't draw there. About a 10% dominance here. And I shouldn't even have drawn that, but a 10% dominance back in here is about where we were at in terms of the amount of $10 million transactions. And now we're at 40% dominance. So a huge shift in the volume of Bitcoin that's being bought at one time, and also the folks that are coming in. So what this article states is that it's a lot of institutional size investment trading entities, and then also high net worth individuals that are buying lump sums of Bitcoin when it dips. So definitely something to keep your eye on there. And then this is a very interesting chart that aggregates transaction volumes with the actual network value of the transactions. And so this creates kind of this ratio that then can be used to predict the price of Bitcoin. And what this is showing right now is that the current value of Bitcoin should be between 32.50 and 36.1. So what that would say is that we'd actually be dropping from where we are at this point, and Bitcoin is actually slightly overvalued in the short term. Not saying in the long term, I think we're super undervalued in the long term, but short term, this signals that there could be some downward movement. Now, this is not the bearish signal we're going to talk about in a second, but it does contribute to the bearish case in the short term for Bitcoin. And this is kind of the second to last news point that I want to bring up, but I flip-flop on this. So Bitcoin adopted as legal tender by an African country, and that was actually the, Central African Republic. Yep, right here. The Central African Republic adopted Bitcoin. Now, I think long-term, if we're really zooming out, I think this is fantastic news. I think that it just speaks to countries and larger entities willing to get involved in crypto, willing to give Bitcoin a chance. What I will say is that short term, I think this is almost going to do nothing for Bitcoin price. And why I say that is because, countries like El Salvador and particularly, the Central African Republic, they do not have a lot of internet coverage. They don't have ways to actually access the currency. So this has actually been a big question for, people at news outlets, people even in Africa, kind of wondering, yes, this is cool, but how are they going to use this? How are they actually going to, bring this into their everyday lives? And, 71% of these inhabitants in the Central African Republic, they're living under the poverty line. So, that's, $1 to $2 a day. To think about Bitcoin being used, these people are not going to really be using it on an everyday basis. I mean, it would take some insane, workarounds, insane changes to how they do things to make that happen. So although this is very bullish long-term, I don't think this is really going to do much in terms of price action or on-chain for Bitcoin. Now, something that I will say is more interesting and could lead to some midterm to longer term upward price action, upward price pressure for Bitcoin is if banks start allowing Bitcoin-backed loans. Now, banks make a crap ton from loans. This is kind of where this is where their bread is buttered, interest, lending out money, and this is kind of where they're making most of their money. So if they can attach to Bitcoin as a way to have backed loans, that is another huge adoption metric for Bitcoin, and a lot of chances for more transactions, more volume to come into Bitcoin, especially with institutions that have more equity to deploy. So for example, last month, KuCoin launched a digital assets unit and BlackRock, and they participated in a $400 million funding round for USDC stablecoin, the USD stablecoin creator Circle. So they're kind of, getting their ducks in a line, trying to understand the stablecoin market and starting to issue Bitcoin-backed loans. So I think that could be massive if that turns into a banking industry norm. I think it could be huge for upward price pressure on Bitcoin. Now, let's cover kind of some of the bearish signals we're seeing here with Bitcoin. What I want to chat about mainly, and I know the timeline on this, we're kind of hearing a bunch of different things. What's going to happen short term, long term? I want to preface this by saying I hold Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. I'm never selling my Bitcoin. So no matter what I say here, just know I remain bullish on Bitcoin. I'm just kind of calling what I see here. So this, and you might already see it, this is a quintessential bearish flag in my opinion. So 9 times out of 10, what we see is one more rejection off that top trend line, and then boom, we usually see a lower target at that next 0 fib. So that'd be about 32.7 for Bitcoin. So the bearish signal is this bearish flag that we have forming here. Now, what I do think is possible in the immediate short term is that we could get some traction back above maybe 41.2 here. You can see we had 2 strong days following that just nightmare day, I think, where we fell, almost 10%. And what I could see being possible is finding a retracement back up above 41 and then maybe playing within here. But I do think eventually, especially with the Federal Reserve raising rates, there's going to be a 50 basis point hike, which is double what they usually do. That's coming in 2 weeks. And then there's going to be 2 75 point basis hikes, most likely coming in June and July. Now, that puts a ton of pressure on the market. That is not good for the market. That stops growth. Money is more expensive to get in terms of loans. People stop hiring at the same rate. Growth companies suffer, and risk assets suffer. So things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, all these riskier assets are going to suffer. So not only do we have this bearish flag going on, our macro outlook has gotten worse and worse, not to mention Russia as well, right? So there's a lot going on, but for me, short term, I think we absolutely have to, and this is what's going to happen in the next couple of days, right? We're going to get some upward momentum. We've already seen we're going to come and test that 41 again. In my opinion, we're going to test 41.2 again. Now the question is, do we tap 41.2, bounce back to this trend line, and then do we confirm bearish flag, or do we keep along this trend, right? So this is, technically this is still a bearish flag as long as we keep going along this type of trend. Now this could, tighten a little bit in terms of the trend line, but in terms of the price direction that's assumed, we're still looking for some downside action after a pump to the upside. In terms of the RSI, we're actually looking pretty healthy. We're not overbought. And we're functioning, right in this area, which we did before. And so, you know, not terrible there. It's really good that we're not up at this overbought spot. You know, typically when we're overbought, Bitcoin does not stay overbought very long, especially given how much volume there is every day. So you can see once it tapped that, you know, 70 mark, boom, we crash. And so that's the one thing I'd say that in terms of RSI, this is what makes me think short term, we probably will see one more little pump. I believe this pump's going to be a fake out. Now, this is not financial advice. It's just what I'm seeing. And I think, you know, ultimately that's what we need to be watching over the next few weeks. I'm going to plan on keeping you guys updated on what's going on. If you guys enjoy the more macro, you know, total market news, let me know, because this is actually impacting Bitcoin more than it's impacted Bitcoin in the past, because we have not had a Fed interest rate hike activity and quantitative tightening since Bitcoin has really been in prominence. So if you like that stuff, let me know, and make sure to grab your chart pattern guide. Thank you so much for the video. If you got value, drop a like, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you so much.